this edition of Story Theory, I'll be doing a deep dive into genre and explaining my unique analysis and terminology. A genre is defined as a category of artistic composition, as in music or literature, characterized by similarities in form, style, or subject matter. I believe in writing, there are about 9 genres. I also believe those 9 genres are split into 2 categories. 7 are what I call plot genres. They are action, adventure, romance, comedy, mystery, thriller, and horror. The other 2 are what I call setting genres. They are fantasy and science fiction. It's self-explanatory, but these categories are based on what story elements put the story in a specific genre. For example, action and romance are dictated by the plot, while fantasy and sci-fi are dictated by the setting. I could be forgetting some, but I believe that every other genre falls under one of these, thus making it a subgenre. There could be a 10th genre, which would be drama, but I didn't include that because I believe that every story falls under the drama genre. Drama would be a plot genre, but what requirements would be necessary for a story to be a drama? Conflict? All stories require conflict. I believe stories that are called dramas are just stories that don't have a specific genre, because every story can be called a drama. So drama is the template genre. There's also something I call genre goals. These are things that a story under a specific genre should be doing well. A comedy should be funny and make the audience laugh. A romance should have good romantic relationships and be emotional. An action should have epic action. These only apply to plot genres though. If a comedy is failing to be funny, I'd say the story is failing in its genre. Finally, there's a term I came up with: form of conflict resolution. I developed this in my Chimera Ant video and mentioned it in my Platinum Man critique. I define this as the way a story resolves its conflicts. They are often connected to the genre. Here are some examples. In a soccer manga, conflicts would be resolved by 2 teams playing soccer. In a battle manga, conflicts would be resolved by the characters having a physical fight. Some genres don't have clearly definable forms of conflict resolution, but there's a range of what's acceptable. For example, in a romance story, characters usually resolve conflicts with social interactions. That's very vague, but I know what's outside of the range. If a romance story has characters solve conflict by killing each other, and the story isn't under the action or horror genre, then that's outside of the range. Stories establish their forms of conflict resolution early in the story. When a story suddenly introduces a new conres down the line, it feels unsatisfying. For example, Death Note establishes its conres as using the Death Note and having strategic mind battles. If Light suddenly picked up a gun and shot his enemies, it would feel out of place. If a battle manga that has martial arts and magic as its conres suddenly has a character using an atomic bomb, it would feel out of place. I believe that conreses work like this because it is its own narrative chain. Staying with the battle manga example, characters using martial arts and magic are like the setup in the setting. Now, anytime a character resolves a conflict with martial arts or magic, it's like 2 or more chains cross and create a payoff. At minimum, the conres chain and one of the plot chains cross. This is just a miniature payoff in the conres chain. On the flip side, that means that when the conflict is resolved with a new conres, the plot chain is approaching its payoff, but the new form of conres, with no chain of setups, shows up and resolves the conflict, almost like a Deus Ex Machina. This ends up feeling unsatisfying. Theoretically, a story could set up a new form of conres before executing the payoff, but I can't think of one that does that off the top. Some forms of conflict resolution, like having discussions or basic social interactions, almost never feel out of place, even if they aren't introduced at the start. I'd say this is because they fall under drama, the template genre, so every story has access to them. To recap, drama is the template genre. There are 9 genres underneath it which are split into plot and setting. Each genre has genre goals, and form of conflict resolution needs to be consistent with what was established at the start of the story. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and help me revolutionize the manga industry by buying my manga and spreading the word. All important links will be in the description.